Yo guys, welcome to the Zelda fiction. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto left Konoha and raised the Western Empire? Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. 1 month after the failed assassination attempt. It was a beautiful morning in Fire Country. The sun was shining and birds were singing, but the pre-top half clone didn't really care about any of that. He was created 1 week ago in Suna and had since then made his way towards Konoha, littered with a lot of chakra metal to allow him to operate a long distance away from Naruto. And now he had reached his target. Konoha was just 2 kilometers ahead. Going further would mean running into the village's outer defenses, but that would not be necessary. He took out a scroll from one of his pockets and unsealed a ton of sealing equipment. Then he created 20 shadow clones. Alright everyone, you know the plan. Get to work. Later that day. Things were quiet in the Konoha Ninja Bank, and the single banker present didn't think this would change for the rest of the day. But then an average Chunin entered the bank. He didn't even set foot into the security seals behind the entrance region, but dropped a single kunai on the floor before vanishing in a puff of smoke. Then in a flash a very familiar young man appeared along with a very familiar older man. A second later the young man vanished again before reappearing with another very familiar older man. This process repeated itself 2 more times. Then the now 5 prison people made their way towards the counter. Naruto was in the front with the clan heads Shikaku Nara, Chauza Akimichi, Inoichi Yamanaka and Shibi Aburami, following close behind him. "Hi there mister." With a big grin he unsealed one of his giant storage scrolls. "These friends of mine would like to make a small withdrawal." Flashback. Talk with Shikamaru. "Alright, tell us about this backup plan of yours." "Well you see we want to leave Konoha." "What? Why?" "A bunch of reasons really. Since my father and his allies are outvoted on every council session and thus were unable to prevent having several of our young stolen away, everyone felt more like a slave or pawn than a member of our village. Well my father tried to gain support on the council against Danzo's and the Hokage's decisions. I tried to rally other people. But most people don't want to go against him. The civilians are absolutely unconcerned since Danzo mostly uses children from the clans and orphans. And most of the shinobi are too focused on their ideas of duty and loyalty to do anything. So we don't really see another option. I really don't like this idea, it seems like you are giving up Konoha." Shikamaru nodded. "I know it's troublesome, but in a way we do. Well I really hope this will help turn the daimyo against Danzo. Another part of me is sure that nothing major will happen and we will just further deliver the village to Danzo's hands by removing many of the people who could stand against him from the village. But I just don't see any other viable option. Then I will just have to be successful in killing Danzo and this won't be necessary. By the way, who did you mean with we? Who is in on this? Your clan. Nara, Akimichi, Yamanaka and Aburami. Wait, all of them? The whole clans? Yes. The clans and some others who are with us. Where do you want to go? Well I hoped you could give everyone shelter." Naruto's eyes lit up and he nodded. He liked the plan a bit better after now. "It's a long way but we would be relatively safe from Konoha. Our biggest problem is of course how to get everyone out of the village. I was thinking of a diversion, something along the lines of a giant fire maybe." Naruto shook his head. "Shikamaru, that is actually the least of your problems." "Huh? Wait a second, I'll show you." Naruto quickly unsealed some of his sealing equipment and drew 2 teleportation circles on the ground. Then he beckoned Shikamaru into one of them and after a few hand seals he appeared in the other one. "These things have a range of 3 kilometers. My bigger seals would be able to take you from Konoha directly into the western regions, but I guess there is not enough room in your compounds to hide one of those. Then maybe you could use smaller seals in the compounds and a big seal outside of Konoha." "Yes. That could work. Do you have enough chakra to pull off something like that? You would have to teleport about 600 people after all." "Easily. Shikamaru, I am sure I would be able to move the whole village if needed. But we would still need to get you into Konoha, Naruto." Hinata spoke up. "Naruto, can't you just give Shikamaru some of your Hiraishin kunai and he distributes them to everyone who wants to come with us?" "Yes. That's a brilliant plan, Hinata." He handed Shikamaru a scroll with several Hiraishin kunai in it. "Wait, are you saying Naruto can use the Hiraishin? The fourth's your father's technique?" Naruto shrugged. "Yeah, I first used it when getting away from Konoha." Shikamaru's thoughts were racing. Now this operation seemed a whole lot easier. "Shikamaru-san, who are the others you were talking about? Who besides the clans would be coming with us?" "Tenten and her father for once." She was easy to convince, considering how strongly she is opposed to marry Sasuke. "Anko has had a hard time since Naruto left the village. I guess it was because people were looking for another victim to take out their frustrations on. And then there are Tucci and Am from the Ichiraku ramen stand." Naruto was overjoyed. If they did this, a lot of his old friends would come with him to the west. But he reminded himself that this would not be necessary since he would just kill Danzo. Yes, if he managed to do that, every one of them would be happier and able to stay in Leaf. What about Kiba-kun? Hinata had actually first wanted to ask about Niji. But that would have been silly because they didn't really have a viable way to remove the cursed seal. She was certain that Kurama would get very angry if they tried to pass him around and use him as a means to remove cursed seals. And the whole process based on the Fox's cooperation after all. Well, there has been an internal struggle in the Inyazuka between supporters of Danzo and those opposing him. Kiba was actually of the opinion to support the Hokage, and by that Danzo's actions. Since we weren't sure how things would go, we didn't even try to recruit him. Hinata looked clearly discouraged by this news. And bushy brows. Well, since Lee is so focused on his sensei guy, we tried to include him in our plan several months ago to maybe take both of them with us. Unfortunately, Guy began spouting how unyouthful it is to betray one's village. I had to restrain him with my shadow bind jutsu, and luckily Ino was able to wipe his last hour of memories with a jutsu she learned. Naruto sighed. They may be able to take a lot of their friends with them if it came to it, but many others would stay behind. He nearly didn't have the courage to ask the next question. Iruka-sensei? Iruka clearly opposes Danzo, but he told me he didn't want to take any open action against the man. He rather wants to protect his students and teach them the will of fire so that they don't become taken in by Danzo's teachings. Naruto nodded. He could have figured it would be something like this. One more thing. If we do this, we have to rescue the taken children from the root headquarters. By the way, there were even 2 people there whom you know yourselves, even though they don't fit the normal age group for root recruits. Then flashback. After they had emptied the 4 clan vaults, Naruto brought the clan heads back to their respective compounds to oversee the evacuation. After the others were home, Naruto teleported with Shikaku to the Nara compound where Hinata was anxiously waiting. A few meters behind her was the small teleportation seal, which connected the Nara compound to the big teleportation seal outside of Konoha. There was a long line of people and their possessions, and one group after another entered the seal and was sent away by some of Naruto's shadow clones operating it. Even more of Naruto's clones were transformed into Nara and were posing as them outside of the compound, doing their usual routines to avoid suspicion. Immediately after Naruto and Shikaku had appeared, Hinata asked them. Did everything work out? Yeah, we got everything. With all those empty vaults, the ninja bank doesn't look as impressive anymore. He took the big storage scroll from his back and handed it to Shikaku. Dear Mr. Nara, you keep this for now. The Nara accepted the scroll and went to help a few of his clansmen with moving a big chest onto the teleportation seal. Naruto, can we please start the second phase already? Hinata, please calm down, we can't risk this when half of the clansmen are still inside Konoha, and even then you have to keep a level head. Hinata nodded. They had had discussions about this multiple times already after all. But she couldn't help being restless. Let's go meet Shikamaru, he has the best overview of our situation. But before that, I need you to create a shadow clone for a special mission. Hinata did as she was told and Naruto created a shadow clone, too. Then the 2 shadow clones hinged into a random male and female Nara respectively, and the Naruto clone led the Hinata clone out of the compound. The real Naruto grabbed Hinata and teleported them both to the big teleportation seal outside of Konoha. There Shikamaru stood beside the designated entrance to the seal with a big bunch of papers containing a complete list of the refugees. Whenever a group made its way from one of the 4 small teleportation seals to the big one, he marked the respective people as present on his list. Hey Shikamaru. How are things? Well, we got about 3/4 of our people into safety. You still need to pick up the Ichirikas and Tenten and her father from their respective homes, and then we can start phase 2. What about Crazy Snake Lady? Anko is already in the west. She simply strode into the Yamanaka compound and used the seal there. She wanted to get away from the village fast, it seemed. Luckily, it doesn't look like she drew too much attention. Naruto nodded. Alright, then I'll hurry with getting the others. And in a flash he was gone. Naruto arrived in the back of Ichiraku's and was standing right in front of AM, who was rummaging in one of the suitcases standing around. Naruto. Hi AM, long time no see. She quickly gave Naruto a hug to greet her long-gone friend. I know we don't have much time right now, but I figure you would be very interested in hearing this. I overheard how Lady Tsunade told Sakura that she was pregnant yesterday. Naruto wasn't really sure what to think about this. After their last encounter, he had wondered if Sakura shouldn't stop seeing Sasuke, if even she couldn't be happy around him anymore. But with her being pregnant now, things would get really difficult if Sasuke didn't change. I hope she will be fine after this. I am not sure Sasuke treats her right. Naruto, since you were gone, she has been talking badly about you basically non-stop. You really shouldn't show her any sympathy. Naruto shrugged. Whatever happened, he was basically incapable of resenting the girl. Anyway, I'm glad we get away from this village. Can you believe many people actually celebrated when it was announced that you would be turned over to Danzo? Unfortunately, Naruto had no problem imagining this to happen. He knew that despite everything he had done before his flight, most of the villagers still resented him. At least their celebrations came to a sudden stop when your escape was made official. AM called her father from the counter to the back of the ramen stand, and after a short reunion between the blonde and the old man, Naruto created 2 shadow clones to take their places and avoid suspicion. Then he transported both of them and their luggage in multiple jumps to the big teleportation seal. After that, Naruto teleported to the weapons shop where Tenten and her father lived. Her father had closed the shop for the day since they were taking everything in it with them, and it was impossible to hide that fact from possible customers. Tenten only greeted Naruto briefly and then demanded to be taken away as fast as possible to flee from the village, which tried to have her marry Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto complied and quickly teleported her outside of the village. Then he returned to get her father and their possessions. Transporting their luggage was easy enough, it was only one bag filled to brim with storage scrolls of all kinds of sizes. After Naruto reappeared with a man at the big teleportation seal, Tenten immediately dragged her father towards it. Naruto rejoined Hinata and Shikamaru, his father Shikaku was with them. Wow, she really hated the idea of staying in the village and marry the team. Shikamaru nodded. Yeah, she was absolutely ecstatic when I first presented the plan to her. Then his attention was drawn to one of the small teleportation seals, where Inoichi appeared, carrying a still unconscious Ino, with his wife next to them. They slowly made their way towards the big teleportation circle. But that the evacuation of the Nara and Yamanaka is complete. Only about 15 Aburami and 10 Akimichi still need to make their way through the seals, and we haven't had word of any troubles. Does that mean we can finally go? Yes, Hinata, we'll rescue your sister now. Naruto was a bit concerned that the usually calm and collected girl was this agitated, and he hoped that it wouldn't cause any problems. How is your chakra, Naruto? You have been teleporting people all day and created a ton of shadow clones to pose as the missing clansmen after all. I have used up a bit more than half of my chakra so far. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Shikamaru nodded and handed his lists over to his father before Naruto, Hinata and Shikamaru stepped onto one of the now unused teleportation seals and Naruto brought them towards another seal outside of Konoha. A few minutes later they were observing the 2 Anbu guarding the great metal doors to the root headquarters just outside of the village walls. I'll take care of them. Hinata circled the Anbu in the cover of the forest. She made a few hand signs and then rushed towards the first one. The Anbu didn't react immediately, and when he did, it was too late. Hinata had reached him, and after one strike to the chest he crumpled to the ground dead. Shikamaru was impressed. She had used a simple gain jutsu to delay their reaction for just a few seconds, and that was enough. The second Anbu tried to get away from Hinata, but she was faster and in hand-to-hand combat a Hyuga was absolutely deadly. A second Juken strike to the heart later he was dead, too. Hinata is scary. What have you been teaching her? Naruto shook his head. She has been with me for a month only. This is Danzo's training showing. Shikamaru shuddered, he should have figured this much. With their Byakugan and ability to kill by touch only, the Hyuga had the tools to be excellent assassins. But most of them were too obsessed with their ideas of honor to go down that path. They joined Hinata in front of the great metal doors. Naruto created his 6 paths and planned to blast the doors open with his Diva Path's gravitational powers. But Hinata beat him to it. She coated her body in demonic chakra and after a few punches the metal doors first bent and then burst open. Hinata let the chakra cloak dissipate and was breathing hard. Nevertheless she stormed into the complex only seconds after that. Shikamaru and Naruto stared after her. Troublesome. It seems by taking Hinata's sister, Danzo has unleashed a monster. And what kind of power was that anyway? Naruto only shrugged. Then both followed after the agitated girl. Naruto left his protection path at the entrance to defend it against incoming Leaf Shinobi. In the entrance hall lay the bodies of 2 more root Anbu. Hinata was nowhere to be seen. Shikamaru stayed in the entrance hall and took out another list, he was to make sure they rescued all the taken children. Naruto left several shadow clones with him, who started drawing a new teleportation seal. He and his remaining paths fanned out into the complex. Shiri Aburami was having another bad day. Their instructor was making her and her partner dodge kunes again, and she was sure that he loved seeing them run for life, bleed and scream. Logic dictated that they somehow had to escape, but there was never a chance to do that. Their instructor had used a specific seal again this morning, which cut her off from her hive mentally and made her quite helpless. She was sure that he loved seeing her at his mercy. Shiri realized too late that their instructor had now thrown 6 instead of only 3 kunai, and she was unable to dodge 2 of them. But then her partner intervened. He blocked one of the kunai with his arm, and his ninkin, his little ninja dog, jumped and picked the other one out of the air with his snout. The boy drew the slightly blunted kunai out of his arm and was now bleeding. Since their instructor had forbidden them from working together for this exercise, Shiri knew that he would punish the boy. Her partner had taken quite a lot of their instructor's hellish punishment for quite some time now actually, and often it was for defending her. This confused Shiri greatly, since the boy's actions defied all logic. Suddenly the door burst open and a young man with blonde hair and strange eyes entered the room. Their instructor seemed very surprised about the sudden intrusion, and that was his downfall. The blonde rushed towards him and quickly shoved a blue ball of chakra into the evil man's chest and sent him flying. Then he turned to her. "Shiri Aburami?" She nodded. I knew it. Of course the sunglasses wearing one is an Aburami. Anyway, I'm here for you. Your family is leaving Konoha and you're coming with us. She nodded. She wasn't sure if her family was acting according to logic, but that didn't matter. She was just happy to get out of here. "And who are you?" "Hiro Inyazuka." "Of course, the dog. I'm sorry kid, but your family is not going with us." "Well, if you want you can come too. But you most likely you won't be able to return to Konoha and see your family for quite some time then." The boy looked crestfallen, obviously unsure what to do. Either go with a complete stranger away from Konoha and your family, or stay and most likely be subjugated to more of this hellish training in isolation from the rest of the village. Shiri knew that logic probably dictated for the boy to stay. He might be able to return to his family and friends once this was over, and if he went, chances were that the council would demand another child from his clan. But somehow Shiri didn't want him to stay. She extended an arm towards the boy. Kiro had been thinking hard before, but when he saw her gesture his face lit up and he gladly took her hand. He gave a determined nod towards their rescuer to signal that he would come with them, and his ninkin barked his approval. Naruto was running through the halls of the root complex, searching for more of the children and for Hinata. He paid some attention to his shared vision with his paths, who had so far rescued 10 children. He still couldn't comprehend how these people could put 5-year-olds through such brutal training. Suddenly Naruto noticed the feeling of demonic chakra in the air and immediately rushed into the direction it came from. Naruto took several wrong turns because the corridors sometimes went into directions he didn't expect and he lost some time because of that. He was worried by loud crashing sounds which rang through the complex, obviously originating from the same position as the demonic chakra. He finally arrived in a large hall where he saw 5 dead root Anbu lying on the floor with horrible injuries and missing limbs. The large cement pillars in the room had been destroyed during the fight, which caused the ceiling in the middle of room to come crashing down. Naruto saw a young Hyuga girl, most likely Hinata's sister, run away into the opposite direction from him into the chaos. She dodged through the waves of collapsing cement blocks before an especially large part of the collapsing ceiling shielded her from view. Hinata was staring into the direction in which her sister had vanished. She only had some long scrapes on her arms and legs and was otherwise unharmed, but she looked completely exhausted. She was breathing hard, was looking very pale, and she was even swaying slightly. "Hinata, are you alright?" Now that he had gotten closer he could see the girl was shedding some tears. She let her head sink in defeat. "She doesn't want to come with us." "Well, we could still take her, these rocks won't stop us." "Maybe she is being manipulated." Hinata just shook her head. "No, Hanabi is doing this of her own free will." Now she looked at him determined. "I won't force her." "Are you sure? Would you really be alright with that?" "Yeah, please let's just get out of here." Naruto nodded, grabbed Hinata and teleported them back to the entrance to Shikamaru. "Have we found everyone, Shikamaru?" Shikamaru sent a worried glance towards Hinata but started to report. "Well, you found all our clan's children. Additionally, you rescued 9 orphans and 1 Inyazuka boy. I only thought Konohamaru Sarutobi would be here too." Naruto cursed. After what Shikamaru had told them he had expected to run into the third's grandson here somewhere, but somehow that hadn't happened. Hinata, could you use the Byakugan to look for him and any other children we might have missed?" "Yes, Kurama-san managed to unseal one of my eyes yesterday." She shuddered slightly, her eye wasn't restored completely and still hurt a bit when she used it. And she definitely didn't look forward to the painful procedure of the fox unsealing her other eye. "Byakugan." After scanning the complex for several minutes she came to a conclusion. "I'm sorry Naruto-kun, but Konohamaru isn't here. Only my sister and a few older root members are remaining." Shikamaru already had a theory. Maybe Danzo puts him through special training somewhere. He is the son of the 3rd Hokage after all. Damn. Well, alright, let's get out of here then. There is nothing we can do. They all stepped onto the teleportation seal and Naruto started his hand signs. Dope. The call rang through the entrance hall. Naruto knew that voice. "I'll be there in a second." He stepped out of the teleportation circle, and with a few hand seals, he sent Hinata and Shikamaru away before they could protest. Sasuke. How did you get in here? Gritting his teeth, the Uchiha answered. Your clone let me through the barrier. Naruto could of course have seen this if he had paid any attention to the protection path's vision. What was he thinking, or rather what was I thinking? I am still in the middle of enemy territory. I need to make this quick. Anyway, Sasuke, what have you been up to since I was forced to leave the village? I trained to become strong enough beat you. What is up with your eyes, dope? Well, I kind of lost one eye and found this cool replacement ones in one of Orochimaru's lairs. He was definitely not going to tell Sasuke that his eyes were basically an evolved Sharingan. Anyway, I heard congratulations are in order. Sakura is pregnant. Sasuke scoffed and shrugged. Sasuke, she really cares about you. Don't do this to her. I don't care. My first goal is to kill Itachi. She is an inconvenience. Naruto just shook his head. Sasuke, you don't have to be like this. You don't need to act like a total asshole to become strong. I am only with Sakura because it was one condition for Danzo to train me. Naruto blinked. Danzo trains you? Sasuke, why are you so drawn to power-hungry maniacs? What do you mean? Haven't you realized that he somehow manipulates Tsunade into doing his will? That was the reason why I had to leave Konoha. And that's just besides the facts that he steals little children from their parents to train them and wants to marry you to women who do not want to marry you. All that doesn't matter, Danzo's training is much more effective than that of that lazy-ass Kakashi. Listen, Sasuke, how about you come with me? Sakura too. We can be a team again, and I and some friends of mine can teach you quite a bit. As I said, you don't need to be an ass or turn to power-hungry maniacs to become strong. I would never accept your help, dope. I will always be superior to you, and I will prove it. And that means any training from you or your friends would be pointless. Naruto growled in frustration. Now Sasuke was really pissing him off. So you will continue work for Danzo? He is just a stepping stone for me to gain power, just like you. Fight me, dope. Sorry, Sasuke, I am kind of exhausted and need to get out of here. You will fight me now, Naruto. And Sasuke stormed forward while making the necessary hand signs for the Chidori. Out of reflex, Naruto used the powers of his Diva Path and embedded the surprised Uchiha into the nearest wall. He could see immediately that Sasuke wouldn't recover anytime soon. Damn it. If he was this grumpy before, after I beat him in an hour-long match at the Valley of the End, I don't want to know what he'll be like after this. Then Naruto vanished in a flash. He reappeared near Hinata and Shikamaru right next to the big teleportation seal. Shikamaru was looking through the lists his father had left him before using the seal. The girl captured Naruto in a quick hug. I'm glad you are alright. As if Sasuke could touch me as things are now. Anyway, Shika, how does it look? Did we get everyone out? I can't really believe it, but we did it. Everyone except Konohamaru and Hanabi is accounted for. Well then, let's leave Konoha behind us. A minute later they were gone. Behind stayed only a few shadow clones who were tasked to erase the seal and any other possible evidence. An hour later, Naruto and Hinata finally arrived at Ichiraku's ramen and took seats next to each other. They had roamed the streets for some time while chatting about random things, and with Naruto's carefree attitude, the Hinata clone was really intrigued what this special mission was all about. Hey AM. Hey old man Tucci. AM and Tucci rolled their eyes, while Hinata giggled at his antics. He was still looking like a Nara, but he certainly didn't act like one. Naruto, what is this special mission? Why are we here? Well, you see, there kind of is no special mission, I just needed to tell you something. Hinata nodded, she had already figured this much and really wanted to know now why they had gone to Ichiraku Ramen. You see, a while back after my first real mission in Wave Country, I was thinking on how attached Sakura was to Sasuke. It was the first time that I actually thought I might not end up being with her. But that didn't really affect me that much because I thought once I was a famous ninja or Hokage already, I would find a girl for sure. Hinata nodded, this sounded just like Naruto. His confidence was incredible, and nothing could keep him depressed for long. Well, you see, I thought about how things would be once I was a famous ninja, how people would look up to me, and that maybe I would even have my own little fan club just like Sasuke. But then I realized something. I know that some members of Sasuke's fan club had some strange ideas of Sasuke's greatness, but had no idea what Sasuke himself was like. I didn't want to be with a girl who only thought of me as some kind of awesome ninja or hero, without knowing the real me. So I decided I would definitely take out the girl I liked to Ichiraku's at least once to show her that I, well awesome, am still Naruto Uzumaki, ramen lover and #1 knucklehead ninja. He chuckled and grabbed the back of his neck. I mean, it's not like I needed to show you that, since you liked me before I became awesome in any way. But well, it was promise, even though it was one only to myself. Hinata's eyes went wide. She now knew where this was going, and that brought her close to a mental breakdown. Well, I know I probably should have taken you out somewhere else first and in person and not like this, transformed in just as shadow clones, and I am really sorry for this. But we kind of didn't have the time before, and this might be the last chance to ever take out anyone to Ichiraku's. Not that I mind, since I have already taken the girl I like here. Hinata, I have been thinking about you ever since you rescued me from that interrogation cell. I realized how nice you are and how much I like you as a person. And this last month of training and working together has only confirmed that I really like being around you. What I want to say is, Hinata, will you be my girlfriend, please? Hinata had silently listened to Naruto all the time. Over the course of his speech her eyes had first gone wide and later her face sprouted a fond smile. After the last words registered she quickly screamed out a yes. Before jumping Naruto and capturing him in a long hug, which he gladly returned. They were still in this position when Itachi placed one giant bowl of ramen in front of the two, along with 2 pairs of chopsticks. This might be the last meal ever served here, so let's not let this go to waste and dig in. Hinata was a bit disappointed but detached herself from Naruto and sat down on her chair again. Then they both started to attack the big bowl of ramen. After they had eaten for a few minutes, Naruto set his plan in motion. He grabbed the other end of the noodles held by Hinata's chopsticks, led it to his mouth, and began slurping it down, while Hinata had the other end of the noodles in her mouth and stared at him. Then she followed after his example and began inhaling her part of the noodles, decreasing the distance between them quickly. When there was no more space between them, they gave each other several quick pecks on the lips before Naruto bit off the noodles, and both of them quickly chewed down their half. Then Naruto captured Hinata in a full-blown kiss. She tasted really exciting to him since she had just eaten ramen. 2 minutes later Naruto and Hinata dispelled from lack of hair. Then Itachi dispelled from hitting his own forehead too hard. Am only rolled her eyes. Naruto and Hinata were in a meeting with the clan heads and Naruto's captains. They were discussing their current situation and their future plans. Prior to the operation Naruto had drawn an extra-large protection seal around the war camp, which was now filled to the edges with dozens of large tents housing the refugees. Naruto hoped that he would be able to provide them with a permanent shelter soon. If everything went according to plan, that would even be possible within a week. Suddenly Naruto became beet red and Hinata simply fell over, having fainted. Naruto created a shadow clone and picked up the unconscious girl. Then he gave the others an apologetic grin and rubbed back his head. I am really sorry, but something important has come up. I'll leave this shadow clone to take over for me. He simply went out of the tent without waiting for a reply, carrying Hinata. In the evening of the same day, Kakashi Hokage, Elite Jounin, arrived at his regular place to eat. Hello Am. One miso please. He wasn't exactly sure why he had taken to going to Naruto's old favorite place. Maybe it was because he wanted to convince the girl that it was justified what they had done and wanted to do to Naruto. But maybe the real reason was that he needed to convince himself of that fact. The girl glared at him like always, but started preparing the ramen anyway. When she was done, she handed him the bowl with a strange glint in her eyes. Kakashi was alert immediately. He sniffed the noodles to check for poison, and after that didn't produce anything, he used a special tincture on a small drop of the ramen broth, which would turn red if it contained poison. It didn't. He shrugged, he thought he had just been paranoid. So he dug in and swallowed a big amount of noodles at once and immediately regretted his decision. Something very spicy had been mixed into the ramen, and Kakashi was rolling on the floor clutching his burning mouth. And he heard laughter, somehow familiar sounding one at that. Kakashi-sensei, you always fall for the simplest pranks. Kakashi froze, the hellfire burning in his mouth and throat forgotten. He got up and stared at the girl. Naruto. The puff of smoke later Naruto was standing in front of him. What are you doing here? I will have to arrest you now. I am just a shadow clone sensei. This time Naruto had made sure to put as much hate into the honorific as he could muster. And I needed to get some people out of this village. Kakashi stared at him. The Ichirakas had fled the village, this much was clear. This time they will catch you Naruto. You won't be able to escape like last time, however you did it. But sensei, you already saw how I escaped last time. Kakashi had seen something which disturbed him greatly during the assassination attempt but hadn't been able to believe his own eyes. Operation. Yes, my father's technique. You're lying. You really are one with the fox. Evil trickster. Naruto shrugged. Somehow he didn't mind Kakashi hating him. He had been devastated at first, but after the beating the man had given him, Naruto was not keen on making up with him. I don't care what you think, but I can say that you are a bad ninja if you are unable to look underneath enough to see something as simple and clear as that. But I really want to know. What happened after I attacked Danzo? How did the bastard survive? Stop insulting an honorable village elder. And Danzo reappeared out of thin air a few seconds after his corpse had vanished. You must have been under a genjutsu. No, I definitely felt the guy's chakra while pushing my Rasengan through him. No genjutsu can imitate that. And you saying here he appeared out of thin air means you were under this genjutsu too, even though you had your Sharingan active. This is really strange. By the way, that honorable village elder is brainwashing the Hokage somehow. Kakashi was taken aback. The boy had matured mentally, bepising the situation so well. He was wondering if there was any truth to Danzo manipulating the Hokage. One day later, the council was discussing the consequences of the kidnapping of several children from the root training facilities when the door opened and a certain older banker entered the room. Honored council, Lady Hokage, I am sorry to intrude on your meeting, but I have important news. The council got a bit nervous since last time the man's news had been really unpleasant. The man sent a nervous glance towards the clan heads, specifically to the heads of 4 particular clans. I have to inform you that since yesterday, the Nara, Yamanaka, Akamichi and Aburami clans are no longer official clans of Konoha since they extracted their clans' fortunes and returned the ownership of their compounds to the village. Everyone on the council turned towards the specific clan heads with questioning glances. The Nara clan head Shikaku spoke up. You really are a bunch of idiots. I mean, I had hoped it would take some time for you to figure it out to allow me to get everyone away from Konoha. But I never dreamed it would take you this long, let alone allow me to be here. Unfortunately, we are all out of chakra, or we would have tried to kill that Hokage manipulating asshole Danzo again. Well, there's nothing we can do about that now. See ya. And then the 4 clan heads vanished in puffs of smoke. A while after the meeting, Danzo Shimura was livid. After the failed assassination attempt, he had prepared a list of demands for Naruto to agree to for the girl's safety. He had been sure that he would be able to control the boy's further actions through her. But now the boy had really pissed him off by stealing his newest soldiers and even 4 clans away. Danzo's retribution would have to be absolutely brutal. He prepared 2 sets of orders, one for the Hyuga clan to activate the cage bird seal of the former heiress Hinata, and the other was a mission for his loyal pawn Sai. A week later Sai arrived in Iowa, his precious cargo well secured. After speaking to several officials, he finally found himself in the office of the Tsuchikage. He bowed to the man. Normally Sai would anger everyone he met just to gauge their reactions, but he couldn't afford to do this here. This was an important diplomatic mission. Who are you and why did you need to see me? I was under the impression that the Leaf's ambassador would be responsible for anything regarding the relations between our villages. Lord Tsuchikage, I am Sai and I was sent here by the Hokage to tell you an SS rank secret. We heard news that you recently formed a non-aggression pact with a certain warlord. The Hokage believes that this treaty was signed under false pretenses. What do you mean? Naruto Uzumaki's full name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He is the son of Konoha's Yellow Flash, the 4th Hokage. Can you back up this claim? Of course. Smiling Sai took out a scroll from his pocket and handed it to one of the Anbu standing next to him, who brought it towards the Tsuchikage. This is his birth certificate. Inoki looked the document over. Everything was in order, the signet of the 3rd Hokage verified its authenticity. Very well, I thank you for your services, Sai. But I have one more question. Why now? I beg your pardon, Lord Tsuchikage. I am sure the Leaf knew for some time about Naruto being the famed warlord of the West. So why act now exactly? Has he angered the Leaf? Inoki had heard from spies that something had happened in the Leaf village, but the reports were still vague and he wanted to know what the boy had done. Nothing has happened, Lord Tsuchikage. We were simply concerned that you were tricked when making the treaty. You're lying. I know something happened, but just not what exactly. Tell me. Naruto kidnapped multiple people from the Leaf village, most of them civilians. This was no lie. Since the clans were basically large families, the amount of young children, retired shinobi and housewives in them was higher than the amount of active shinobi. He must have kidnapped quite important people to provoke such a reaction from the Leaf. I mean, this is information I wouldn't give up lightly. Sai remained silent. Well, I guess if that was all you had to say, we are finished now. Sai smiled and nodded. Lord Tsuchikage, if you would please return the document to my care. It holds quite a value for Konoha. The old man shook his head. I am sorry, but I have to return this to its rightful owner. Sai became nervous. What do you mean? Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze has the right to have this. It will make things much easier if he doesn't have to rely on the Leaf to prove his parentage when making a new treaty. Sai didn't like what was happening, the mission was clearly a failure. But he just kept smiling. The Hokage won't be happy about this. Inoki shrugged, he didn't really mind pissing off Konoha since he never overstepped the boundaries of their existing treaties. After Sai had left, Inoki contemplated the impact of what had happened. With a little luck, the situation between Konoha and the warlord would escalate further after whatever the boy had done. Inoki congratulated himself for the decision to stay out of this and watch the things to come from the sidelines. One day after the clans escaped Konoha, Naruto was standing in front of his captains, the clan heads, some of his troops and a lot of the refugees, including all of his present old friends and classmates, and he loved it. Being the center of all attention was something he reveled in. Close behind him stood Hinata, being a bit nervous after Naruto had dragged her onto the small podium. "Everyone. I am really happy to stand before you all. When I first made my journey to the west, I was sure I would return to Konoha one day and be Hokage there. But now after everything that happened, the new friends I found here and the old ones that joined me, I am determined to make this place my home. Of course the tents you are all living in right now won't do for much longer. Just a few kilometers to the west from here lies the old capital of the long-gone Western Empire. Constant fights about dominance over the city have left it in shambles. Right now it has been abandoned by all military powers since it lies in the center between all three remaining factions in this war. That means taking the city is a risk because our enemies are only waiting for one of the others to make a move on it. But this is a risk I am willing to take because I know that with all of you, we will easily be able to beat them back. We will use the location of the city to our advantage and finally unite the West again." All of Naruto's soldiers cheered at this. "In the city we will be able to find a permanent shelter for everyone here and maybe a new home. I know that many of you hope to be able to return to the Leaf Village soon when Danzo is gone, and I promise that I will do everything in my power to help rid Konoha of his dominance and enable you to return home. But I would welcome everyone who decides to stay here in these lands with me and help me unite and protect them." There was a lot of cheering from all of his soldiers and appreciating murmurs and a few cheers from the refugees. "There is one more thing we need to inform the refugees about since they would find it out soon enough anyway." Naruto looked towards Hinata, who was hiding her head between her shoulders, looking to the ground and shuffling her feet slightly. She was obviously unable to make the announcement herself. Naruto sighed. "I am no longer the host of the nine-tailed fox. Show them, Hinata." Naruto stepped behind her and she became even more nervous than before. Hinata started drawing on the fox's power and coated her body in a cloak of red demonic chakra. Suddenly the chakra seemed to take the form of a smiling fox head and all the refugees stared at her in a mix of awe and fear. Hinata let the cloak dissipate again and quickly hid behind Naruto from the stairs. After a quick glance at the girl, who tried to get away from the attention, Naruto continued. "We were hiding this fact in the elemental nations to protect Hinata from the Akatsuki. But here everyone knew about Fu and myself being Jinchuriki already, and with the training we have Hinata do, she wouldn't be able to hide this fact anyway. Nevertheless, I ask you to be extremely careful about telling these things to outsiders. One more thing. Since my escape from Konoha I have been on good terms with the fox. I don't want you to suddenly think of him as a good guy, just know that some things were not under his control back when he attacked the leaf." When Naruto stepped down from the podium he contemplated his position. The morale among the refugees was quite bad. This was to be expected, even though everyone agreed to the plan to leave the village, only a select few had been happy about it. It had been a necessity to protect the children of the clans, but it still was a move that conflicted heavily with the shinobi's sense of duty, and they still saw the leaf as their real home. Naruto once again swore to himself to free the leaf to enable the clans to return. Even though he would of course prefer it if his friend stayed with him. Something was irritating Shino. There was a certain smell in the air that drew him in and excited him. And he wasn't the only one affected, his hive was going absolutely crazy. It smelled like Hive Queen. Even with his closeness to insects, this was a very strange thought for the Aburami. He knew quite well that such concepts didn't apply to humans. He followed the smell through the army camp to the point where it was really strong and someone was blocking his path. Standing before him was a girl, about his age, with green hair. Shino leaned closer to her and sniffed, he was now sure the smell came from her. The girl furrowed her brow and regarded him critically. "You smell really good." Slap. And the girl stormed off, leaving Shino with a swelling cheek. Later that day. Naruto was overlooking the once great city from a small part of the city walls. Most of the wall was still intact, but every few hundred meters there were big holes in it. With Naruto were a dozen of his most trusted ninja. "Hinata, can you scan the city and tell us what to expect?" The girl nodded and activated her Byakugan. "I can't find any enemy soldiers or ninja, they must all have left the city. Most of the civilians have weapons in their homes, but I think it is to protect themselves from looters. There are several deserted barracks and buildings that could have been clan compounds. They are mostly intact, but littered with traps. A lot of the exploding powder used in this regions is utilized in those, most likely because they don't know how to create explosion tags. Nevertheless, there is so much of it that those explosions could easily destroy the buildings and kill our shinobi. We have to be very careful about that." Naruto nodded. This was good news. He had wondered if his enemies might destroy any buildings he could use, but instead they had planned to thin out his numbers in addition to that. Unfortunately for them, he was sure that his ninja were capable of disarming any trap there might be. Especially with help from a Hokage. Alright Hinata, pick yourself 5 helpers and start disarming those traps. Kentaro, go back to the camp and order everyone to come here. We don't have to be worried about any attacks right now. The captain nodded and immediately went on his way. Shikamaru and the rest of you are with me. We will find out if this place has still some kind of administration and start setting up our own. One day later. Naruto had taken residence in the old town hall of the city. The building's roof needed repairs, there was no flowing water, and there was a lot of dirt and debris, especially on the lower floors. But all of the other empty buildings had similar problems, and a view from the mayor's office reminded him of the Hokage tower. Shikamaru was just making a report. The team disarming the traps has cleared most of the buildings, and the explosives are being moved to a guarded building in the outskirts of the city. Our 4 clans have each claimed one of the abandoned compounds as their new homes. The buildings need a lot of work, but we will handle it. Your soldiers are stationed in one of the 3 barracks. That means we have still a lot of free space. I was thinking of ordering most of my spread out units here because I would expect our enemies to attack here, and even if they don't, this central position will enable us to react quickly. That could be a problem. There is hardly any food and winter is coming soon. It seems whoever held the city before didn't even leave enough to feed the civilians. I will handle that. I can obtain food from the other cities and villages I hold. Using my teleportation seals, that will be no problem. Shikamaru nodded. Good, then that is taken care of. As you ordered, we sent scouts in both our enemies' directions. The Southern Alliance is mobilizing and our scouts think they will be upon us in 2 weeks. They have the most territory and the biggest army at the moment, but their alliance is still kind of shaky. Yeah, I have dealt with those kinds of enemies before. Using our ninjas, we should be able to pick them apart well enough. We can turn them against each other through misinformation and fake attacks. If possible, I would prefer to prevent any larger battles and make many of those warlords take our side by diplomacy and, if anyone agrees to it, personal combat. To find ways to break them apart, I will need a report on the clan's active ninja strengths, mission experiences and preferred team compositions. Yes, I can prepare that together with my father and the other clan heads. Good, if you could have that by tomorrow, we can then begin to plan missions for the teams. Shikamaru nodded. Concerning the Northern Alliance, there is very interesting news. Warlord Tokugawa Oza killed most of the other warlords in a coup last week and made the rest of them swear loyalty to him. He has claimed the title of emperor. He will need a few months to organize his forces, but when he is done with that, he could be a formidable foe. And there are rumors that he has had ninja training. That sounds like we should deal with him now that he is weak. But I fear we would stretch ourselves too thin when fighting both of those factions at the same time. Troublesome, but I agree. Hinata entered the room, looking really tired. We are done. We have disarmed all the traps and secured the explosives. She shuffled towards a free chair and slumped down in it. Great work, Hinata. She gave him a tired smile, and Shikamaru continued his report. Coming back to our situation here. Apart from food, our main problems are that the whole littered city walls offer almost no protection and that there is no running water. I think we could fix the old water distribution system in a week or so if we concentrate almost all our attention to it, but the walls will take months of work. Alright, I was trying to rejuvenate my chakra since spending almost all of it in Konoha, but I am good enough now. I will use my paths and shadow clones to get food here, draw a basic protection seal around the city and start fixing the walls. Maybe I could even spend some chakra to teleport 1 or 2 of my remaining samurai units here. Then you have everyone available, work on restoring the water distribution system and prepare your report on our ninja as we discussed. Shikamaru nodded. You said your paths and clones would do all those things. What are you up to? Naruto rubbed the back of his head and grinned. Well, you see. He activated his Rinnegan, and with a flick from his hand, he used his powers to pull Hinata from her chair into his lap. During the short flight, the startled girl let out a small yelp. Once Hinata was seated atop Naruto, he put his arms around her, and she blushed furiously. I was hoping to be able to spend some time with my girlfriend. Shikamaru sighed. Damn, if I could have clones do all my work, I could go cloud watching all day. The afternoon sun was shining into a room with a single bed. On the bed lay a blonde girl and there was a drip next to her, feeding her artificially. Suddenly the girl's eyes shot open and she stared into the room. Then she grabbed her head and started screaming. 1 minute later Inoichi stormed into the room. "Ino girl, are you alright?" She was still grabbing her head with a pain-filled expression on her face. "My head hurts." Inoichi sat down beside her and Ino grabbed onto her father and buried her head into his chest. After a while she felt slightly better. "Dad?" "Yes, princess." Danzo used the Sharingan. Under normal circumstances, this would have caused quite a reaction from the veteran shinobi. But right now he was just happy that his daughter was fine. He simply continued to hold her. There was one piercing red eye looking at me from inside Lady Tsunade's mind. And somehow it seemed to hold me in place, preventing me from doing anything. She stopped, something told her that she had been unconscious longer than a few hours, a lot longer. How long was I out? Her father sighed. Too long. About 2 months. The girl laid her head on his chest sideways and looked out of the window. Dad? Where are we? Several days later. Ginsuke Hideako, messenger of warlord Maizu Adachi, was in a terrible position. He was chained to the wall in the dungeon of another warlord. The two warlords were allies in the Southern Alliance, but Ginsuke had acted suspiciously when trying to avoid the soldiers of the local warlord Hidegashi while traveling through his domain. This fact had been reported to Hidegashi, and after continuous observation had revealed that the messenger acted the same way all the way through Hidegashi's territory. He had finally decided to capture Ginsuke. The door to Jinsuke's cell opened and in strode Hidegashi with one of his bodyguards and someone who looked like the very cliché of a jailer and torturer, with a black cloth mask covering his head and several tongs, knives and other torture instruments on his belt. The warlord held up an unfolded letter with a broken seal of Jinsuke's lord. "Tell me everything you know about this and that asshole Adachi." Jinsuke remained silent and let his head hang low. While he didn't act very defiant, he seemed unwilling to betray his lord. Hidegashi gestured to the torturer next to him. The man strode forward, grabbed one of Jinsuke's confined hands and broke one of his fingers. The torture continued for a while until the messenger finally broke down. "Please stop. I'll tell you everything." His tormentor stepped away from him to allow him to start talking. "My lord ordered me to deliver this letter and the others to a few of his allies. He told me this was a matter of absolute importance and that these letters were not to fall into foreign hands. I am only a lowly messenger, I do not know about my lord's plans, honorable warlord." "Adachi gave you the letters himself?" "Yes, Lord Hidegashi." Hidegashi nodded. It was to be expected that the messenger didn't know the contents of the letters, but it was important to know that Maizu Adachi had sent them himself and that the whole thing wasn't just a setup. He decided to tell the messenger what this correspondence entailed. Your lord plotted against his own allies and wanted to pull a similar stunt as happened in the Northern Alliance. He planned to kill me and many of the other warlords and divide the lands among his allies. He wanted to do that right before the attack on that Uzumaki upstart when we least expected it. Ginsuke had a look of shock on his face as he heard those things. This meant he was now in the hands of an enemy of his lord, and almost none of the warlords showed any mercy to their enemy subordinates. Hidegashi nodded to his bodyguard, who drew his sword and rammed it into Jinsuke's chest. The messenger suddenly had an expression of absolute surprise and confusion on his face, but then the light left his eyes, and he was dead. Only a few hundred meters away from the warlord's castle in Noichi Yamanaka awoke. He shook off the terrible feelings of torture, being close to death and condemning a man to such a fate. His temporary teammates Shino and Anko were at his side immediately. "Did you succeed?" Inoichi nodded, still tired from his long-time mind transfer jutsu. "I think I played my part well, they didn't suspect a thing. Then those two warlords will be fighting each other soon." The Aburami was quite pleased with the results of this mission. It was not honorable, and Jinsuke had been an innocent messenger, he had just served the wrong man. But if they fought the alliance head-on, a whole lot more people would die, several ninja from Konoha included without a doubt. People like Jinsuke were unfortunate sacrifices to save a lot of lives. Most of all those of Naruto's men, of course. This was so boring and stupid. Why did I have to be on this stupid team again? Anko wasn't quite as happy as the Shino. She had been itching for a fight. "Anko-san, your knowledge on how to fake the documents was invaluable, while my tracking abilities proved useful to find a suitable target. I think this team was selected well and our success is proof of that." Anko scoffed but remained silent. The bug boy did have a point. Inoichi spoke up. "Alright, let's pack up and head home. Ino was only awake for 1 day when I had to leave, and I need to see that she is doing well." The clan head wondered for a brief second for how long he would call the still foreign city home, but then immediately started the preparations for their travel. Hinata was just resting a bit after she had trained water jutsu, her main elemental affinity, with a few clones for hours. "Dixon?" "Yes, Kurama-san. I'm bored." This confused Hinata. She had talked with Naruto about the fox a lot and he never said anything about him needing to be entertained. "What did you do when you were bored while being sealed inside of Naruto-kun?" "Well, I either insulted him or made fun of him. And often he entertained me by just being the loudmouth idiot he is." Hinata knew the fox well enough at this point to make out the hidden meaning. "You miss him?" "I never said that." She sighed. "I don't think I can be as entertaining as Naruto-kun. Maybe we could find something else for you to do." Hey, you could let me out and allow me destroy a few cities. Hinata actually liked the part about letting him out, having a bit of privacy from time to time was something she definitely missed. The destroying a few cities part wouldn't do, of course. Maybe we could find a way to let you out partially. Like I give you control over a shadow clone of mine. I like that idea. The seal is built upon the host's will to hold me in check. Maybe you could focus on letting my mind through while creating a shadow clone. Hinata did as she was told, and after a few tries, instead of another Hinata, there stood a red-furred fox with 9 tails. He was about waist high and had only about as much chakra as a normal shadow clone, but Kurama was happy enough with being outside. He guess who's back, everyone. Hinata gave the fox a while to get accustomed to his new body before she put her fingers into a hand sign. Hi. Then the fox clone vanished. What was that for? I am sorry, Kurama-san, but I needed to see what would happen with the clone's memories since it is made from both your and my chakra. I actually really like this. I know what your clone saw, heard, smelled and felt, but I can't remember what it was thinking. Kurama immediately understood why this was a good thing to Hinata. He wouldn't be able to do anything without her knowing it. Damn. I guess you wouldn't let me out again if I decided to eat some people. Hinata knew the fox was teasing her for the most part. No. Oh well, at least I'll be able to stretch my legs a bit. Fu was wandering through the streets of the old capital. She was really angry at herself because she had left her wallet at her temporary home and now she would have to get it before trying out that new raiment stand. After spending so much time together with Naruto, hearing him talk with glowing eyes about the food of the gods and developing a liking to the noodle dish herself, it was really annoying to delay tasting what Naruto called the best ramen in the world. As she was fuming to herself, she suddenly saw a familiar face. Hey, creepy sunglasses guy. Shino had just returned from his mission and was on his way to the Aburami's new compound. He turned towards her, looking completely indifferent as always. How about you treat me for lunch for acting as strange as you did the other day? Shino thought about that. He knew that the girl was called Fu and that she was the host for the seven-tailed beetle. He had also found out that randomly sniffing on girls was not considered socially acceptable, so he should apologize for doing that. It was probably not logical to get involved with a being that if cut loose would be able to level the whole city, but that seems acceptable. Danzo's most reliable soldier had returned from his latest mission and they were discussing the events during the assassination attempt. From what you told me, that must have been the Rinnegan. What does it do, Jiraiya? A couple of things. It was the ocular power of the Sage of the Six Paths after all and is considered to be the strongest taijutsu of all. The white-haired sage was about to continue but Danzo cut him off. Can you prepare a report with the details? Of course. Good, we will need that knowledge. The boy will most likely be surrounded by enemies soon when Sai finishes his mission and Iwa turns against him. But I want to be the one responsible for his death. What he did to Konoha is inexcusable. Very well. Shall I carry out the assassination myself then? Danzo thought about this. This was his strongest and most reliable man. But silent assassinations were not really his thing and Naruto was surrounded by a whole army and a lot of ninja. And there was a risk if Jiraiya fell into Naruto's hands. No, Sai will do it eventually after the boy's little country has become a single war zone. I need you for something else. Danzo stopped for a second, unsure if he did the right thing. But Naruto's actions had weakened the leaf and the fire daimyo had been furious. He needed to mend the damage fast. I need you to start negotiations with an old accomplice of mine and friend of yours. It had been over 3 months since the clans arrived in the west when there was a small attack on Tsunade by just 2 people. Sasori of the Red Sands and Deidara. They obviously wanted to capture the host of the one-tailed tanuki, Gaara. Unfortunately for the 2 Akatsuki members, Naruto's pre-top path was just in a meeting about their trade agreements with the Kazekage, and they were driven off by the combined efforts of the 2 young men. There was some damage done to several buildings by Deidara's explosives, and several sand shinobi were killed, most of them by a traitor among the Suna shinobi. But overall the village hidden in the sand came out of the incident relatively unscathed. A few days later someone else arrived in Suna and now Naruto was anxiously awaiting her arrival in his office. Through his shared vision Naruto saw how the pre-top path and his companion arrived in the small teleportation circle just outside his office. The path teleported away again to return to Suna to continue negotiations and make sure that the Akatsuki hadn't returned. But the other person opened the doors to Naruto's office and stepped in. Shizune-ni-san. Naruto flew at the woman and captured her in a hug. After they had greeted each other for the first time in years, Shizune suddenly got quite a bit paler and pointed towards a human-sized red fox with 9 tails, sleeping peacefully to the left of Naruto's desk. Naruto, is that the QP? Yeah, well, at least a shadow clone controlled by him. Don't worry, he is harmless. Harmless. What do you think will happen if the other villagers know you have left him out? Well, in a way at least. Oh, they know. The first days he was out, he spent his time chasing terrified ninja through the streets. It was quite funny actually. They would run away from him until they were exhausted and then face him in total desperation, only to realize that they could best him easily. That means they hate him even more now. Actually, being able to kill him quite often seems to have gotten rid of a lot of the tension. They certainly don't like him, but they don't hate him as much as they used to. Shizune nodded. She wondered if she would ever get used to seeing the fox run around seemingly free. How come you are here, Shizune-ni? What happened? Well, you see, I was traveling to find new medical methods to treat people under the influence of mind-influencing jutsu. I knew something was wrong once Tsunade had you arrested, but no one listened to me because she acted normally otherwise. She even allowed me to examine her and try to treat her, but there was nothing I could do with my medical jutsu. And she was opposed to being examined by Yamanaka. I hope we can find a way to help her soon. Yes, but to do that we need to find out what caused this in the first place. Lady Tsunade showed certain symptoms of having been under the influence of a Yamanaka mind transfer jutsu. But those only have a temporary effect. In fact, none of the Yamanaka techniques permanently change the mind of their target. I guess the old hawk must have secretly recruited someone from that clan a while ago. Anyway, we found out that Danzo used the Sharingan thanks to Ino trying to enter Tsunade Bachan's mind. He has one implanted into his right eye that is usually covered by bandages. Shikamaru and his dad believed that it must be one of the eyes of one Shisui Uchiha, who was known for his ability to control people. Then that's how they did it. Lady Tsunade is too experienced to simply keep staring into a Sharingan eye. They must have surprised her with the mind transfer jutsu instead to make that happen. Naruto nodded. That is good news actually, because it looks like it isn't as easy for Danzo to control someone as it seemed first. What are you going to do now, Shizune-ni? She sighed. Well, I didn't have any luck in finding anything that could help Tsunade-sama, and I don't know what Danzo would do if I return. Why don't you stay here with us until we have found a way to free Tsunade Bachan? I could really use your help as the leader of my medical corps. Give me a while to think about that, Naruto. Of course, Shizune-ni. A few days later, the medic told Naruto that she had decided to stay and help improve his medic corps. 2 weeks later. It had been 4 months since the clans arrived in the west. The Southern Alliance, which had opposed Naruto, collapsed completely after Naruto's ninja had sown mistrust between its warlords. One after another, each warlord was either convinced to join Naruto or was disposed of in one way or another. Now all of the Alliance's lands and the remaining soldiers were under Naruto's control. But the lands were still unsafe and riddled with countless bandit groups, and there was still unrest in many regions, a lot of which was caused by Naruto's ninja missions themselves. And so Naruto had dispatched most of his regular troops to deal with those problems. But that meant only a fraction of Naruto's forces remained at the new capital, and now the northern warlord Tokugawa Oza was marching towards the city with his army and was expected to arrive in only 2 days. As things stood, Naruto would have to face the 50,000 men strong army with only about 10,000 of his own soldiers. Since his scouts had reported the approaching army too late and his remaining units were very spread out among the country, it didn't make sense for Naruto to spend his now very valuable chakra on teleporting more soldiers to the capital. Luckily, at least all of Naruto's ninja were available. Even though the numbers were this different, the morale among Naruto's troops was not bad because they knew that with the ninja clans and Naruto, Fu and Hinata especially, they had fighters that could easily handle a great amount of enemies. Naruto was on a training field, trying to train for the upcoming battle, without actually using the chakra for the techniques, when he saw Hinata marching towards him. Naruto, we need to talk. Naruto blinked. Hinata was awfully serious. He nodded to signal her to say whatever she wanted to say. I talked with Shikamaru and I think he is right. We should fight this battle. Naruto groaned. Hinata, as I told Shikamaru already, this won't be necessary. I am absolutely certain that I can overload the gravitational powers of my Rinnegan in a way that I can take out Oza's entire army. This may harm me somewhat, but I am tough, and me getting hurt is surely better than hundreds or even thousands of my soldiers dying in battle. No, Naruto, it isn't. That is the point. You have avoided all larger battles. You never led more than a few hundred men into combat, nothing that could be called leading an army. If you want people to accept you as their leader and not just fear your power, you have to prove that you can do just that. If you want other nations to respect the might of your army and not see you as the single obstacle they have to overcome to conquer your nation, then you need to fight this battle. Otherwise your nation might be very short-lived. And then you will have not saved anyone by doing this alone. Besides, completely relying on that technique is a stupid risk in itself. Hinata, all this time I have tried to shed as little blood as possible. And now you are trying to talk me into the one approach of the situation, which will most likely get more people killed than any other. He lowered his head a bit. And I don't want to risk your life or that of my friends if I can help it. Usually he didn't have such qualms, as he would always believe his friends to pull through. But the upcoming battle worried him more than he liked to admit. Especially since with him being the undisputed leader, everyone else's lives were in his hands. Naruto, you will have to trust in us. There is no way that you can always protect us from danger, we are ninja after all. She smiled at him. And believe me if I tell you that I will do anything to make sure neither of us dies in that battle, there is too much I have to live for. Naruto smiled slightly and nodded. Let's talk with Shikamaru and the others about our strategy and try everything to minimize our losses. Maybe we can even find a way to capture as many of our enemies as we can and not kill them. Somehow this managed to cheer Naruto up considerably. Yes. You are right, Hinata, we will make sure to save as many lives as possible. Naruto was standing among his army, atop a hill just 1 hour outside of the capital. They had decided to meet the enemy away from the city to protect it and its people from harm, and because fighting from the city walls wouldn't really have helped them. Now they would be able to fight downhill, with the morning sun shining into their enemies' eyes even. Naruto wondered if Oza was confident enough to attack them under these conditions, he hoped he would be. The plains in front of their hill were slowly being filled by Oza's approaching army. It was an impressive sight, the sheer amount of soldiers with their weapons, armor and banners glowing in the morning light. Naruto let his gaze wander over his own, less impressive-looking army. The bulk of his soldiers consisted of 10 of his samurai battalions. Naruto had assigned his captains to lead the units. Behind the lines of samurai, Naruto's ninjas stood at the ready. The Nara clan had taken the left flank, while the Aburami covered the right. The center was going to be supported by the members of the Akamichi and Yamanaka clan. They had developed several strategies to incapacitate a lot of enemies, but of course showing any hesitation beyond those plans would only endanger themselves. Casualties were inevitable. Before Naruto stood Hinata, Fu, Anko, Shizune, the Sand siblings, and both generations of the Ino Shikacho formation. The plan was that Temari would use her wind attacks to protect their men from projectiles, Gaara would both use his sand defensively, and to trap a lot of enemies, Shizune and Anko would use bombs with sleeping gas they had developed to incapacitate groups of enemies in Ino. Shikamaru and Choji would try to immobilize and take control of Oza himself to maybe end the battle prematurely. The rest of them would support Naruto's units wherever needed. To Naruto's relief, they saw their enemies advancing towards them immediately after they had taken formation in front of the hill, and they did not wait for a better chance to engage. He walked through the lines of his samurai with 4 of his paths and Hinata by his side. The barrier and healing path stayed in the back, one to help protect his men from projectiles and jutsu and the other to support the medic corps. When he was in front of his soldiers' lines, Naruto turned around to face them. Everyone. After months of hard work, we now have the chance to reach our dream. Only one battle and the West will finally be united again, and there will be peace. I ask every one of you to lend me your strength to reach that goal, and I know that with your combined power we cannot fail. For unity and peace. The call was repeated by all of Naruto's 10,000 soldiers, but the giant roar didn't impress Oza's men, and they continued their advance. When their first enemies were only a few hundred meters away, Naruto went through a few hand signs and activated several explosive tags they had planted before the battle. The explosions destroyed the covers of several large holes Naruto had created beforehand using Earth style. Dozens of enemies had the ground crumble under their feet, leaving them trapped in the several meter deep holes. Naruto decided to use deadly force now to try and soften the enemy's onrush. He went through several hand signs again and blew multiple large fireballs at their enemies, each causing an explosion which killed or severely burned multiple enemies. Then the sky darkened when thousands of arrows flew towards his men everywhere. He saw several purple barriers created by his protection path stop a large chunk of them, and another part was blown away by a wind jutsu courtesy of Temari. Naruto did a wind jutsu of his own to stop another group of arrows that would have made it through otherwise. He then gave a signal, and his ninja began using their own ranged weapons, raining death upon their enemies with kunai and shuriken. But that didn't stop them, the spearhead was only about 100 meters away from Naruto's position now. Naruto briefly glanced at Hinata and found her with her eyes closed. He knew exactly what she was doing. Hinata's mindscape. Hinata appeared before the giant cage of the fox. Hello, Vixen. Hello, Kurama-san. I need your power, please. Yes, but be careful, don't open the seal too far. Your body still can't handle as much of my chakra as I would like. She nodded, pulled up her shirt, then went through a few hand signs and had her fingertips glowing with blue chakra. The seal on her stomach appeared, she put her glowing fingers onto it and turned them by 1/8 of a circle, opening the seal by the same amount. Hinata started to glow in a soft yellow light and she could feel a lot of the QB's chakra running through her system. The fox grinned one of his toothy grins. Give them hell, girl. Can you set me free too, please? I may not be able to do much with just the chakra of one shadow clone. But I would really like to rip out just a few throats. Hinata shuddered inwardly. The fox definitely meant exactly what he said this time. Hinata opened her eyes in the real world, quickly created a clone for Kurama, and stormed right towards the incoming enemies. She used the fox's chakra to create additional limbs and used them, her Byakugan and her gentle fist style in combination to tear through the enemy lines. While it was hard enough to stand against a Hyuga in close combat normally, it was a total nightmare against one who could create additional limbs that were able to stretch and bend very far. Hinata usually only needed a single touch to either incapacitate or kill an enemy. At the same time Naruto was fighting as well, surrounded by his paths. So far he tried to conserve his chakra and he hardly used any techniques. He only fired off one more flame jutsu to deal with an especially pesky flock of enemies, but apart from that he used basic taijutsu. He risked a small glance towards Hinata and saw her weaving through the enemy's lines in a spectacular fashion. Behind her followed the Kurama clone, watching out for any dangers to Hinata and for easy targets for himself. Steadily a large amount of enemies gathered around Hinata and Naruto, keen on taking them out. Then metal canisters were thrown into the fray by Naruto's soldiers and there was a shout which Naruto identified to be the voice of Tsunade. He quickly teleported towards Hinata, or rather the Hiraishin seal she was carrying, grabbed her, and then teleported back behind his soldiers' lines. Only seconds later the metal canisters burst open into large clouds of sleeping gas, covering the whole area in front of Naruto's center. Temari used a wind jutsu to blow the gas away from their men and towards their opponents, revealing hundreds of incapacitated enemies where the gas receded. Naruto's paths and the QB clone had been caught as well and could be seen lying among their enemies. Naruto recreated his lost paths and used the safety behind the lines of his soldiers to take a look at the overall situation. On the right flank the Aburami were absolutely wrecking their enemies, their insects draining them of energy and leaving them unconscious. The left flank was in more peril as the Nara could not really deal very well with a large amount of enemies because they got exhausted quite fast if they used their techniques for taking out multiple opponents. Naruto sent Kankuro, Anko and the older Inoshikacho formation to support them. In the center things were still calm as a thick cloud of sleeping gas still divided Naruto's troops from the enemy. Behind their lines, a short distance away from Naruto, his healing path, Shizune and the rest of his medic corps were busy trying to save or patch up any wounded soldiers. Again a volley of arrows filled the air and again it was stopped by the combined efforts of Temari and the protection path with a little help from Gaara's sand this time. Suddenly a loud roar filled the air and out of the gas cloud stormed samurai clad in full body armor with masks on their faces that were obviously able to filter out the harmful gas. Naruto's frontline samurai were taken by surprise and a lot of them were immediately cut down. These soldiers were obviously part of Oza's elite forces as they dealt with Naruto's forces frighteningly easily. Naruto immediately stormed back into battle upon seeing his forces in trouble. Hinata, Fu and Gaara followed close behind him. The time for holding back was definitely over and Naruto's elemental path created both a house high earth and an equally big fire elemental, which immediately started tearing through the enemies. His Asura path used rockets and turned his arms into blades to cut down his enemies. Naruto's left Fu threw one lightning jutsu after another and took out one group of enemies at a time and to Naruto's right, Gaara was burying enemies under waves of sand. But new hordes of enemies moved forward and the fight turned into a chaotic melee with Naruto and his paths, Fu, Gaara and Hinata right in the middle of it. In addition to that the Akimichi were fighting among all that chaos, using their super-sized limbs and bodies, and the Yamanaka turned enemies against their comrades. Their opponents proved to be much stronger than before, some of them wore armor that was able to resist a few jutsu. Naruto even saw Gaara and Fu fight enemies who were using ninja techniques. Suddenly a man wearing black samurai armor appeared behind Hinata and quickly drove a sword through her back. When he drew back the blade a blood fountain sprayed out of Hinata's body and the girl collapsed. Naruto only stared. An invisibility jutsu that is able to fool the Byakugan. Then the man was attacked by Choji and Naruto immediately knew that this had to be Oza himself. Choji managed to drive the man back using his boulder jutsu right into one of the shadows of Shikamaru. The shadow user managed to hold the self-proclaimed emperor in place and a few seconds later the man's facial expression changed to happiness, signaling Naruto that Ino had taken control. "I have him." But then Oza's face became that of terror and after he had let out a short scream and his facial expression suddenly changed back to an indifferent look. Naruto knew that Oza had taken control again. The man struggled and broke free surprisingly fast from Shikamaru's hold. Choji tried to grab him using his super-sized arm, but Oza quickly bridged a gap between them and would have sliced the boy in two hadn't Naruto pulled back Choji using his Rinnegan's powers. "I'll take him, you help the others." The Ino Shikacho trio was obviously not happy about this, but they knew that they were outmatched, and so they went to support the other combatants against Oza's men. Oza himself turned towards Naruto. "You're Naruto, aren't you? The brat that is giving me so many problems. And you are Oza. You named yourself emperor before you even controlled a third of the old empire. See, that doesn't matter. By the way, was my intelligence correct and have I just killed your girl? You did attack my girlfriend and you are going to pay for that. Bring it, boy." Naruto wanted to end this fast, and so he used his diva path to catapult Oza into the air. At least that was what should have happened, but instead yellow glowing lines lit up on Oza's armor, revealing a complex seal. Chakra absorbing armor, damn it. Oza attacked him using his sword, but Naruto evaded it and started using earth jutsu on Oza, as he was sure that his armor couldn't absorb those. The self-proclaimed emperor was surprisingly agile, dodged many of Naruto's attacks, and simply broke through others using incredible strength. But he was slowly driven back by Naruto's jutsu. Then he went through several one-handed hand signs, and Naruto was surprised when nothing happened. They simply glared at each other before Naruto got the distinct feeling that something was very wrong. He immediately ordered one of his paths to look in his direction, and through the shared vision he saw that the Oza standing in front of him was not real, and instead one was sneaking up on him from behind. Naruto realized that he was under the effect of a gain jutsu. He quickly created a Rasengan, turned around and drove it into the approaching enemy, only to see him burst into clumps of rock and earth. This was an earth clone. Naruto put his hands into a hand sign. Hi. He felt the gain jutsu fade and saw Oza standing quite a distance away, going through dozens of hand signs incredibly fast. So many hand signs. Is that the jutsu he used on Hinata? I win, boy. And Oza started to turn invisible. But then two tails made out of chakra grabbed Oza by his arms and held him in place and in the air, breaking the invisibility jutsu. Hinata was no longer glowing in a friendly yellow color, but now she was coated in much more demonic-looking orange chakra. Her uniform was still red with blood where the sword had pierced her, but the wound was gone. Oza struggled to get free from the tails, but couldn't do it. His armor started to give off red heat as it was absorbing more and more of the demonic chakra. Naruto decided to add fuel to the fire, created a Rasengan and rammed it into Oza's chest armor. Being this close, Naruto noticed that the armor was giving off more and more heat, and Naruto kept putting chakra into his technique. Oza started screaming as he was boiled inside of his own armor. When Naruto stopped his Rasengan and Hinata let go of the enemy's leader, the armor had become so hot that it bent and a small pool of molten metal formed under Oza. The stench of seared flesh filled the air, and Oza was without a doubt dead. Ugh, maybe we overdid it there. Naruto looked around. His men had already been winning before, but now after the death of their leader, more and more of Oza's men started to flee. Victory was certain now. When he turned his attention back to Hinata, he saw that the girl was running towards him. We won. Naruto caught Hinata, who had jumped him, whirled her around and then pulled her close. But when he had his hand on Hinata's back, he felt something sticky. It was of course blood from the wound she had only a short while ago. Are you alright, Hinata? Yes, thanks to Kurama-san. I am just a bit tired. Naruto nodded, being the host for the Demon Fox did have its benefits. Naruto-kun, how are the others? Well, Shino seems to have gotten himself quite a stab wound, but he'll make it. Apart from that, my paths only noted minor injuries among our friends. Hinata gave him a short kiss on the lips. I am glad to hear that. How about I take a day off, spend it with you only, and we have a romantic dinner with no raiment to celebrate our victory. Hinata smiled and kissed his cheek. Sounds good to me. The Ino Shikacho trio joined the two, and Ino seemed in an incredibly good mood. You two lovebirds can do whatever you want tomorrow. But tonight we celebrate together. During the battle, about 600 of Naruto's samurai were killed and 2 of his captains. The casualties among the Konoha ninja were quite low, 2 members of the Nara clan died and 5 of the Akimichi. The Akimichi were hit the hardest simply because their members were close combat fighters. Of the 50,000 men of Oza's army, 4,000 were killed, 30,000 were captured and the rest fled from the battle. 1 week after the fighting, it was announced that Naruto would be crowned as emperor in 3 months. In a damp and dark cellar in one of his bases, Orochimaru was sitting on the only chair in the room. He was covered in bandages from head to toe, and he was very weak because his current body had once again outlived its usefulness. Kabuto entered the room with a white-haired toad sage Jiraiya, following close behind him. Jiraiya was blindfolded, and his hands were tied with simple handcuffs with chakra restraining seals on them. Normal people might be completely subdued by these precautions, but with Jiraiya, it was questionable if these things would be able to stop him even a little bit. After the door was closed behind Jiraiya, Kabuto even removed the blindfold from his eyes, increasing the uneasy feeling Orochimaru had even more. What is the meaning of this, Kabuto? Kabuto had one of his creepy smiles on his face. Lord Jiraiya has come here on his own accord to talk. Orochimaru looked at the old sage critically. What do you want, Jiraiya? I have come here to negotiate in the name of my good friend Danzo. Danzo? Why would you associate yourself with someone like him? Danzo has persuaded me that my old methods to protect the leaf and bring peace to the ninja world do not work. Now I follow him loyally. It took Orochimaru a few seconds before his face suddenly lit up in glee, as he now understood what was going on with his old teammate. Fukuku, what an interesting development. Tell me, Jiraiya, has Danzo convinced Tsunade of his methods, too? Yes, he has. And what does your friend Danzo want from an enemy of the leaf like myself? He hopes that now that you have taken revenge on our old teacher, you could be persuaded to work for the leaf again. He seeks your help for training the next generation of the village's ninjas. I may have killed Sarutobi-sensei, but he still managed to take my arms from me. Tell me, Jiraiya, why would I even consider helping you? Danzo is convinced that you would be interested in a couple of things we can offer. Sasuke. Jiraiya nodded. Yes, but before that, we need the future of the Uchiha clan to be secured. Danzo asks you to wait about 10 years, then he is yours. DCH, what else do you have to offer then? For one, we believe you would be really interested in what we have planned for you. Danzo wants you in charge of the root training program. There you will be hidden away from the public and be able to work in peace. You have worked with peasants and the bloodlines of lesser villages before. We offer you access to the gene pool of Konoha. Interesting. I get full control over the program? Yes. We need to be cautious when dealing with the trainees sent from the remaining mayor clans Hyuga, Inuzuka and Sarutobi, because they might give us problems if they catch us overstepping certain boundaries with their people. But everyone else, including the many minor clans and other bloodline carriers, are free game. Fukuku, I could really use better lab rats for once. But unfortunately I will have to decline. I work for no one. Yes, that is why Danzo doesn't want you to just work for him. He offers you a partnership. I get a say in any important decisions. That is the idea, as long as you don't betray us. Yours and Danzo's methods are quite similar, you would work well together. We would work on slowly rebuilding your reputation as well, and with a little luck, you may even be able to step into the light eventually. Well, that would take years of work, but still. Jiraiya, if this continues you will offer me to be the next Hokage. You know I dreamed about that position for years. I am sorry, but with your reputation that will never be possible. I guess Danzo will take that title once Tsunade steps down. Yes. Very well, if Danzo is really serious about this offer I want to meet him to iron out the details. And if he tries anything stupid with those eyes I gave him, he will regret it. Jiraiya nodded. Orochimaru had a giant grin on his face. By the way, it has been very fun to watch you dance on your strings like a good little puppet, old friend. The end. So how was this part? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this part with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.